I've been sitting on my thoughts about Power Rangers Cosmic Fury for a little while now. The show's been out for a little while now. Mostly because I have not known what I wanted to say about this show. I liked it. Thought it was very good, actually. Extremely well written. A solid love letter to fans. And a not terrible ending to the ongoing continuity of Power Rangers, which has been more or less unbroken for this was the 30th anniversary, so 30 years. Is that right? God, I'm old. But that said, coming away from the show, I have very mixed feelings about it, and part of that is because it does seem like this show is going to end the ongoing continuity of Power Rangers, something that I don't think should happen. Especially considering that this is going to be a deep cut for true Power Rangers fans. Especially since between a detail in the recent Once and Always special and a detail in this season that's kind of blink and you'll miss it, or I guess talk and you'll miss it because it's dialogue. They perfectly set up the start of SPD, Space Patrol Delta, the start of its establishment on Earth, and the beginning of that era of the Power Rangers universe, right around when it would have actually happened in the timeline. Like, that is such an excellent example of continuity, and then this show ends, and apparently this continuity is done. And I just think that's a waste. But on the other hand, if this is how this continuity goes out, this season did such a good job of making it feel like all the Power Rangers stuff happens in one universe, even though we hardly saw any Rangers from any teams other than the core characters. One of which is the original Blue Ranger, Billy Cranston. He is a series regular appearing in every episode of this show, and it was so gosh dang cool. It was so great to just see him every single episode. Because he's a freaking legend, man. He and his actor, by extension, they're legendary. And I know Power Rangers gets a bad rap for being poorly acted from time to time, but you gotta understand, that's just because a lot of the actors are just beginning their careers, so they're a little inexperienced. And dang it, this is a cheesy show. And some of this dialogue is just never going to sound great coming from anybody's mouth, let alone somebody who is still early in their career. But none of these actors are bad. Like, I don't think any Power Rangers actor has ever actively been bad, except for maybe a couple of them in Power Rangers Megaforce, but that's a discussion for another time. They've just been kind of cheesy. And yet, Billy returns in this series. Heckle from Power Rangers Dino Charge, a favorite of mine, returns in this series in a fantastic way. And Mick Canick from Ninja Steel, another favorite of mine, despite the fact that I thought I was going to hate it, returns in this series. And all of them just fall back into their roles as if they never left them. It's so good. This show is a direct sequel from Power Rangers Dino Fury, which was one of the better Power Rangers seasons already, continuing with the same main cast for the most part. And it picks up exactly where Dino Fury left off. The Emperor of Evil, Lord Zed, has been freed from where he was imprisoned by the powerful Morphin Masters, and now he has teamed up with the greatest of universal evils, a CEO and her Nepo baby, providing him with the resources he needs to launch a proper campaign to take over the universe, which in Power Rangers is a finite enough thing that you can take over the whole thing, I guess. Space in Power Rangers is really weird. And while the Dino Fury Rangers do challenge Zed originally with their original powers, they don't have Zords anymore, and the source of their powers is destroyed, with the exception of one of those sources, the Tricera statue, which is linked to their Blue Ranger, Ealey, who is turned to Zed's side by some evil magic poison stuff. He even gets an upgraded, more eviler and cooler looking version of his Dino Fury suit to wear when he's fighting his former friends. And what's cool about this is it means that the standard rotation of Rangers for the good guys is very atypical. At first, they just don't have a Blue Ranger, and their original leader, Zato, is hanging around as the Zenith Ranger, the thing that he was transformed into by the Morphin Masters when they literally resurrected him so that he could help in the fight against Zed. Not only that, but Amelia, their Pink Ranger, when they finally do get new powers, becomes the Red Ranger. The grid, the Morphin Grid, the thing that gives them their powers, recognizes that she has been holding this team together since everything went bad after that initial fight. And I'll get into all that in a minute. And it literally transforms her Pink Ranger powers into Red Ranger powers and chooses her to be the leader of this team. And there's like no hard feelings over it. Like Zato doesn't get mad or anything. They're all just super happy for her because she's great. Like, she was already an extremely important character in Dino Fury. Very well performed, too. But here, the character just falls into that role. And it feels so natural that you don't even realize that she's become their leader until it clicks. And you just see it all. It's great. It's very well handled. But things did go bad. That initial fight against Zed and his new forces was a disaster. Because CEO monster lady, whose name I don't remember and I don't care. I really hated her. In an I love to hate her kind of way, but I hated her nonetheless. She shows up with a machine that her company has designed that can trap energy beings, basically. And she traps all of the Morphin Masters in energy form inside an energy tube. We'll get back to that in a minute. And what's really cool about this is the person who spearheaded the development of this device was Scrozzle, a character from Beast Morphers, who developed a lot of the tech in that show for the bad guys, which is more great continuity. And because the Morphin Grid is like this big destiny machine, basically, other Rangers show up for the fight. Mick Canick shows up, and he has been a Red Ranger before, so the Morphin Masters are able to restore his powers permanently. And now he's just a Red Ranger, and he totally deserved it. And Billy's there, and he's able to help out and join the team, and help develop their new powers after they lose their old ones. And something that I wasn't sure they were actually doing, but I was pretty sure was the intention, is that this machine that they used to trap the Morphin Masters looked super familiar the moment I saw it. Because Zordon, the original mentor to the Power Rangers, everybody knows who Zordon is, right? He's the guy in the tube, right? But he wasn't originally in the tube. He was trapped in a space-time warp somewhere, like, extra-dimensionally or in deep space. We don't really know. It was never really defined. But he just projected his essence into the tube to communicate. In fact, it was treated very much like a signal that could be blocked or redirected. He was only freed from the time warp in, I think it was like at the end of like the first third of Power Rangers Turbo. And we never really saw the state that he appeared in once he was freed. Like, did he get his body back? Was he like a person? We don't really know. And it was only after that he was captured by the United Alliance of Evil and actually physically trapped within an energy tube that was subsequently broken by the Red Space Ranger, Andros, releasing an energy wave that destroyed all like really, really powerful concentrations of evil throughout the entire universe. Beings that were truly evil were either purged of their evil or destroyed utterly, if they were within the universe at the time of this Z-Wave. And when I saw them capture the Morphin Masters in an energy tube, my initial thought was, they're going to do the Z-Wave again. They're going to have to defeat Zed by destroying the Morphin Masters by breaking this tube and releasing essentially another Z-Wave. And that's not exactly what they did, but they did something actually even kind of cooler that I'll talk about in a minute. But it was really neat. It was a really neat callback to something from the lore of this show that, by its mere existence and the way it's presented, actually clears up a lot of stuff from the show's past. Because until we saw this thing, it wasn't clear whether it was just a continuity error that Zordon was back in the tube, or if he had been put in a new tube. And now we know that it's the latter, at least retroactively. The series also continues in the grand Power Rangers tradition of the Rangers just finding new Zords when they need them, though that actually brings me to one of my main issues with the series, but I'll talk about that again in a minute. And because we already know these characters, we've already gotten to know them over 2 seasons of Dino Fury, the show doesn't need to spend a lot of time on setting them up. So the show is able to move with a really quick pace. It only has 10 episodes and is trimmed of all fat. But anybody who's been with my channel for a while knows that I made an entire video essay championing filler. Or at least what we have come to understand as filler these days. To summarize my thesis there, filler is a term primarily taken from anime where whole episodes and sometimes whole arcs that were not canon to the source material were inserted into anime just to fill time while the manga got far enough ahead of the anime that the anime was sure it wouldn't accidentally overtake the manga. Because when an anime overtakes a manga, you get the last half of the original Full Metal Alchemist series, which is, I think, one of the worst things ever. I know some people disagree, but man, I just think it's very bad. And sometimes filler stuff is good. Like, there's some Dragon Ball filler that I really like. There's even some One Piece filler, One Piece being notorious for its filler, that I think is actually pretty good. But that term made its way into the popular consciousness beyond just anime circles and came to be applied to anything that wasn't specifically plot, that wasn't specifically the plot advancing itself. So even episodes which deviate from the plot for a while to develop characters is considered filler now. And that is so stupid, because shows need to develop their characters. And even though we don't need to be introduced to these characters anymore, they don't need to be established, they still need to grow. And they did, but they grew in like really fast spurts and in the background, rather than any episodes just slowing down and letting these characters develop at a more pleasant pace. Like Javi, who is a musician, straight up loses his arm, freeing their new Zords from a magic stone. And he gets a cool robot prosthesis, and you get the message of, like losing your arm isn't the end of the world or whatever. You know what I mean? It's clear what they were getting at. I'm just phrasing it badly. You get that, and it's handled pretty well. We get to see him learn to use the prosthesis and come to terms with the fact that he's been altered forever. It's good. But all of that, all of him learning to cope with his loss and learning to use his new prosthesis, it just kind of happens in the background. And yeah, they use it to give us one of the cooler episodes of the season where the Rangers pretend to be a metal band made up of monsters to infiltrate a monster base. But I still wish we had gotten like an episode solely to focus on him feeling that loss and his friends helping him through it. I think that could have been really meaningful to a lot of people. And my favorite character, Izzy's girlfriend, Fern, ends up with them in deep space when they go into deep space, and she's not a ranger, so Izzy's worried about her. But she's a perfectly capable young woman, able to make her own choices, so she feels a little smothered by Izzy's overprotectiveness. And then Fern gets ranger powers and becomes the first official Orange Ranger, and her dinosaur that she bonds with to get her powers is Solon, the dino mom that hangs out with them at their base, who is not necessarily my favorite character, but maybe the best character in the show. in these seasons of the show, which is such a cool detail and such a cool way to involve Solon in their fight against Zed and fight against evil, that I wouldn't have actually thought of myself. I'm actually really impressed by it. And the second that she gets powers, even though Izzy has been worrying about her this entire time, she's just kind of over it. Which logically makes sense, because now Fern is a Power Ranger. She's just as safe out there as anyone else. But emotions aren't logical. And I think it would have been nice to get an episode where Izzy and Fern actually talk about this. And it's the focus of an episode. But we don't. All of this happens in the background of other episodes. There's also some fantastic interactions between the evilized Ollie and Lord Zed, where Ollie, he's still the same person. His mind has just been twisted so that his perspective is different. He still wants to rely on teamwork rather than doing things himself. And he still has this mentality of, like, wanting to help out his side, like, being eager to do it. And Zed actually mentors him and teaches him about what it means to be a bad guy in this universe. And they were such good scenes. Like, this isn't my favorite portrayal of Zed. The original still beats it out by a wide margin. But the guy who voice acted him here isn't bad. And like Ollie's a good character. And we get to see some glimmers of this new Ollie that are more nuanced than him just being evil through these scenes primarily. But we get criminally too few of them. More episodes would have given us more chances to explore this dynamic. It also would have given us more of a chance to get attached to the new Zords too. Which, while they're cool, I like the Q Ranger mecha. I'm kind of in the minority in that department, I think, but I like them. But that's really all they are. They're cool and they're there. We never really get attached to them, though, because everything moves so fast that we don't get episodes where the characters fight a one-off monster and have to call on the right Zord in the end to beat him or anything like that. Any of that typical Power Rangers formula stuff. It's fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to see the characters puzzle their way through something. And because of that, because we don't slow down enough to get any of those kinds of episodes to explore the Zords more, it means that we don't get to explore any of the villains more. There's no, like, villain general that the Rangers have to overcome first, or anything like that. And it's really disappointing, because there's some really cool monster designs in this season that I would have liked to have seen actually have some character attached to them, and that just doesn't happen, except in really minor ways, again, in the background. And there was even, like, the perfect opportunity baked in for them to slow down and do an arc with the Zords. Because at one point, in that really cool episode where they pose as a monster metal band that I mentioned earlier, the reason they're doing that to infiltrate this base is because this base has been built up around a dig site where the baddies are unearthing another Cosmic Fury Zord, a Dragon Zord, which greatly resembles Zed's old Serpentera Zord. It's much smaller and much less powerful, but wouldn't it have been really cool if Ollie, who Zed has taken under his wing and has started to mentor, actually gets the Dragon Zord for a while, instead of the Rangers just getting it immediately? And that's his Zord for a while. And he even steals two of their other Zords, giving him his own Megazord, which we see in the Zord footage this season. And the Rangers have to fight him in his Zord. I don't know if there's any footage of Q Reno fighting the other, I don't know what it's called, the other Megazord, the dragon one, that they could have used for that. But, like, I mean, if this is the final season of the original show, and it's a Netflix show, and Netflix has money, just, like, I don't know, make new Zord suits or make some CGI to make that happen. Like, come on, guys, you can afford that. Seriously. It would have allowed for more of that development of the Ollie Zed stuff and also given us more time to grow more attached to these Zords, because there would have been multiple confrontations between the evil Zords and the good ones. Like, I remember the fandom was so excited when it was announced that Q-Rena was going to be the source of the Zord footage this season, because we were all so sure that the Dragon Zord would be like Zed's new Serpentera first. And it just didn't happen. And I was like, I mean, I still like the design of the Zord, so I'm still like, okay, well, this is fine. This is still pretty cool. But, like, every time I saw it, I was kind of just a little bummed out, because it could have been so freaking cool. Because, like, we got our final confrontation with Serpentera back in the Forever Red special. God, forever ago now. That was, what, the 10th anniversary or something? God, I'm old. But, God, any disappointment I had in this season is, like, multiplied 100-fold in the amount of disappointment I have in that final confrontation, because it was just so stupid. If you know, you know. And straight up, man, if we had gotten more attached to the Zords, I would have cared. I would have actually cared when the Rangers summoned them against a juiced-up Zed who had absorbed the power of all of the Morphin Masters to make himself literally the strongest entity in Power Rangers ever. And he just zapped them all. He just blew them all up like it was nothing. I would have actually cared that happened, but I just didn't really at that point. Because again, they were cool, but like, they have like practically no personality. These guys have shown they can rebuild Zords. They'll just build them again if they need them, right? Or like, heck, maybe that magic rock from earlier can just restore them. Who freaking knows? But I want to express, despite the fact that this is a relatively short season, these are minor nitpicks compared to what I feel like the season did right. It looks great. Production values were fantastic. They convert their base in real time into a spaceship and use that as an indicator of how long these characters have been at work trying to get back into this fight against Zed after they're thrust out of it originally. And that's just a really cool framing device for several episodes. I like that a lot. It also brings back previous characters from Dino Fury, and I think just the most appropriate way. We get, what are the names? Jane and Jayborg. We get just enough of them, in my opinion. We get just enough of the Rangers' families, in my opinion. And Mucus and Slither, minions from the 2 seasons of Dino Fury, return now as heroes. They survived the final battle in Dino Fury and have been living amongst humans since then. And they've grown to appreciate humans and therefore people other than themselves. And so they actually help the Rangers using their unique abilities to defeat their enemies here. In one of the largest battles that we ever see. Like, we don't see much of it, but like, it's a massive battle. The entire Earth has been taken by Zed. It's being occupied by Zed's forces. And Mucus and Slither help them to take it back. And considering that I absolutely love Mucus, I was thrilled to death by this. Thankfully, they didn't go the route I thought they were going to go with their characters and have them like make a heroic sacrifice either. That would have really bummed me out if that had happened. Also, they managed to sneak in a really cool, like, trans positive moment using Mucus, because Mucus, she's been in human form before, and she just hates it. She doesn't like being human. And in this, to blend in, they use the same magic that did that last time to make her human again so she can live amongst humans. And she just hates it. She likes her new life amongst humans, but she hates being human. She just feels wrong in that body. And so Zato, who has magic from the Morphin Masters, restores her to her original form and makes the point clear that no one should have to live in a body that they're not comfortable with. And like, yeah, it kind of smacks you in the face with the point it's trying to make, but it's a great point to make in a show that is ultimately trying to teach good lessons to kids. Now, to be fair, I thought it was kind of a shame because human Mucus is played by Mucus's VA and she's just adorable. but like, I like the character, so I don't want her to suffer, I guess, whatever. It was really, really good. I cannot stress enough how just really, really good it was. That's really all I have to say about that. And there's other little moments I could gush about him for a while. Like, overall, I really liked this season. And I'm not going to spoil it specifically because I've already spoiled a couple things I probably shouldn't have in this review, but the way they ultimately defeat Zed and the thing that is revealed throughout that final sequence of events when one character takes a trip into the Morphin Grid for a second, like, all of that I think is just perfect. Again, if this really is the ending of the original continuity of the show, well, we could have gotten like a bigger, more spectacular final battle, and they theoretically could have actually physically brought in more Rangers and had them appear on screen rather than just informing us of what they're up to in the background. I still think it's pretty freaking perfect. Like, the series overall isn't, but considering how powerful Zed was by the end, and the fact that we already know Zed can be redeemed, because this is a resurrected version of Zed at his most evil, but the original Zed was redeemed by the Z-Wave. He was transformed into a good guy. I love the way they leave Zed's character. And I will leave it for you to discover what that is by watching the show, because I do think you should watch it. If you like Power Rangers at all, I do think you should watch this show, even if you're not up on anything past like the original era of the show. I still think you should watch it. Specifically because, and I said we'd get back to this later, the reason they brought in the energy tube was specifically to bring full circle the concept of the Z-Wave with a new Z-Wave. Because, and I'm not gonna go into the specifics of the circumstances because it's a neat twist, one that you'll probably see coming, but I still don't want to spoil it. After Zed absorbs the Morphin Master's power into himself and becomes Master Zed, he is then trapped in the energy tube himself, just like Zordon was. And it becomes the plan of the villains to shatter that energy tube and release Zed's energy across the universe, doing a second Z-Wave, but one that will destroy everything in the universe currently that is good. Which is a terrifying prospect that is drawn directly from one of the most heroic and comforting prospects in the entire franchise. Effectively, one of the greatest sacrifices, possibly the greatest sacrifice, that any character has made in this franchise threatens to be undone by this act. And the stakes have never been higher. If the Rangers fail here, if they don't stop this from happening, then not only will everything that Zordon did become meaningless, but there will be literally no chance of ever defeating evil again. There are certainly other ways that I feel like this continuity could have gone out. Maybe some of them would have even been better than this. But I feel like this is still an entirely appropriate and pretty gosh darn great way to end things. Especially considering how much everything from Beast Morphers onward, this Hasbro era of the show, has been focused on celebrating and developing the continuity and lore of the franchise. To end it in a way that brings that lore and continuity back around and approaches it from a completely different direction, like, the Hasbro era couldn't have ended any other way, I don't think. Or at least this section of it, because Hasbro still owns the show. And it's not like there's never going to be any more Power Rangers. Which brings me to the great question. We know that what comes next is going to be a reboot. Apparently they're going to center it on the character of Tommy, which I don't know how you do that. Because Jason David Frank was Tommy, and he's obviously not with us anymore. But it is going to be a reboot. The question though is, especially considering that like Power Rangers like financially did very well this year, apparently. Is it going to be a true reboot, like an entire new continuity? Or is it going to be the kind of reboot that we've already gotten in Power Rangers before? Because technically Power Rangers has been rebooted before. Like, arguably, Wild Force is a reboot, since it was the beginning of the Disney era and had a radically different tone, a much younger tone than anything that had come before it, if you can believe it, despite the fact that I actually think it's a really solid season. Again, another thing that I'm seemingly in the minority about, I guess. I don't see how. Like, that doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. And then Ninja Storm, it was even more properly a reboot, since originally the apparent plan was for Ninja Storm to not even acknowledge the existence of past Ranger teams, with them being fictional. Like, that changed, but that actually supports my point. This is a show that it doesn't seem like can be properly rebooted. Every time they try, we end up coming back to the original continuity in one way or another. RPM was technically a reboot, since it took place on another Earth in the multiverse. Same with Dino Charge. And yet both of them connect back to the original continuity in multiple ways. Even the really solid ongoing Power Rangers comics that are going on right now, hence being ongoing. Even though they're a reboot of the original Power Rangers, they still exist within the same greater multiverse as the original continuity. So the original continuity is still preserved there too. So is this going to be a proper reboot, or are we going to jump to another universe in the same multiverse and just kind of start over the way the comics did? And if we do, then how long is it going to be, honestly, before they jump back to the original continuity again? Because I kind of just expect it to happen at some point. So while some people are lamenting the end of the show, I'm kind of I'm just checking my watch and waiting for them to get back to it. I mean, hell, if you really think about it, Lost Galaxy could be considered a reboot, since it was the first series that took place after the original Z-Wave, and it was the first series to completely change up the cast and set that yearly tradition. My point is, Power Rangers has been rebooted before, and this continuity did not die, so I don't expect it to die now either. And if I end up being right, that might cheapen the end of this series, but I still think it's a great ending, and I still think this is a great series. It has some problems. There are some things I would have done differently about it, but I think it's a really great season. A really great series, technically. And features some fantastic characters with some really good acting. I really love these people. Like, I follow some of the actors online. They seem like really, really nice people. I vibed with every single one of these characters in some way or another. If I am wrong, and this is it for the original continuity for good, I'm actually happy that it went out with these people. I like them that much. Like, I've said this before in other videos, but Dino Fury is not just a good season of Power Rangers, 2 seasons, technically, of Power Rangers. It's just good television in general. Like, it's a kid's show still, but it's good television. And you should watch it. If you're someone who watches my reviews and the kinds of things that I review here, you should watch it. And by extension, you should watch Cosmic Fury too. But this has actually gone on way longer than I expected it to, this review. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here with that. Try not to spoil anything that I didn't spoil in this review, if there even is anything left. When you answer, what did you guys think of Power Rangers Cosmic Fury if you have watched it? Let's, of course, get a discussion going in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video and share it with anyone else who think would enjoy my content. Subscribe if you haven't, and also, you might as well check out the video description, where I have linked to where you can purchase the first 3 novels in my book series, all of which are available for sale, as well as just other general links to my social media and stuff. Like, genuinely, I'd love to see you guys, like, over on my Tumblr or something. Like head over there and talk to me. Seriously, I'm a pretty good conversationalist most of the time. In the meantime, though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.